And welcome back. Thank you for staying with us on Monday Special. And as promised earlier, for our discussion tonight, what will it take for IEBC to run this election in 42 days? Joining me in studio, to my immediate right, Jubilee Party Vice Chairman David Morave. In the middle, former IEBC Commissioner Thomas Letangule, and next to him, NASA Chief Executive Norman Magaya. And gentlemen, you're all welcome to the program. I want to start with a general question to you all, and David, kick us off. IEBC has set the date of October 17th. What do you think of it? Are you ready?
Oh, tuko tayari. You know, the ruling and the constitution and the law provides if they have a problem with an election, rerun or a fresh election should be held within 60 days. Within 60 days means any day after the date of the ruling. So in this instance, any day was going to go to September 1. Of course, considering other issues like school exams and whatever, I think that date, in terms of the logistics, ballot printing, the gazettement of returning, and the mandatory dates for campaign. Because every campaign has certain, I think, 21 days, Commissioner? Yeah. So I think we're happy. We're quite happy with that one.
Thomas, is it sufficient time for IEBC to check on all its systems, redo anything that needs to be done technically?
Yeah, I think the date 17th is ideal, even for IEBC. Remember, they already have everything in place, and they also have suppliers who are on standby to supply the required materials. So I think the days that they have set is sufficient for IEBC to mobilize its resources, its people, and be able to again conduct this election. And again, because this election is just one out of the 6, it should be much easier logistically to handle it.
Norman, is it agreeable to NASA this date?
I really don't care about the date they settle on. That's their business, but I'm interested in the roadmap to that date. What are the benchmarks that lead to that date? Because that date must be informed by their ability to meet the logistics required for this election. And I think one of the things that I emphasize is that this election must be conducted in strict conformity with the constitution and the election laws. And that involves a lot of things. If they are going to go to the very infrastructure that they used to bungle the August 8th election, then we do have a problem. So before we even comment on the dates, we will want a detailed roadmap of how this date is arrived at. How many days to ballot printing, how many days to ensure that we have a credible, functional results reporting mechanism. All these benchmarks then inform the date. So it will be premature to comment on the date before we get details from the Commission. But they are perfectly within their mandate to decide on the date. But that roadmap is what us as stakeholders will be interested in.
By the way, I'm commenting on the roadmap. Remember, IEBC is always prepared for such a scenario. In fact, as we prepare the election operation plan, which we left to the current commission, we anticipated such a scenario. And in it, we put in plans such that in eventuality of a rerun, as we are going now, the roadmap is already set. And therefore, it's much easier because there is no nominations exercise again. And therefore, IEBC will be able to move very fast on this. The only question is that the ballot boxes used in the last election still contain materials which were used in the last election. Now the question is, will those materials be secured as usual? Or if then that is the case, then they will need to secure fresh ballot boxes. And I think that should not be a challenge as well.
And I think you can straight away get it from our friend Magaya. Already he's not answering your question. The question is, are they ready with that date? And they have started the usual roadblocks. Oh, we want roadmaps, we want this. My friend, the IEBC was very categorical in their statement. Number one, the court ruled, you cocked up, you do it again, follow the law and the constitution. The IEBC is asking the court, please let us know those areas where you think we cocked up.
Right.
So that we know, as we go into this rerun, which are the parameters and what are the areas that we need to be looking at. This is a case where they pass a judgment without any reasons. It's a judgment where they said, it is like this, and we'll give you reasons thereafter. Now, even the IEBC must be at a loss at this point. Which particular areas are they worried about?
I think that is not that's not correct. I will tell you that we will be ready for elections even tomorrow, as long as the roadmap is right, because we are not just going for any kind of election. And I've told Murade this time and time again.
Could you be
that this
maybe
country,
a bit more specific?
That this country is not just gearing for any type of election. Really, IEBC does not have to wait for a detailed reasoned judgment from the Supreme Court to know where they cocked up. They know how they bungled these elections. It's well documented within their systems. There are even preliminary reports from internal within the commission as to what exactly went wrong.
And
the chairman does not need reminding to know that his password was used 9,000 times without his knowledge. He doesn't need
but for the benefit of my audience, if you would, because we're talking about what it would take, Norman, for IEBC to run a credible poll, outline that for us from the NASA perspective. What, even as you talk about the roadmap, if you would, sir.
The election, and the Chief Justice emphasized it, that the election is a process, not an event. So you are not announcing to us the date of an event that is to happen on 17th. The process that leads to election on 17th is as important as the happening of the election itself. And so you must tell us what are your projections in terms of acquisition of election materials. Two, pinpointed directly is the question of the integrity and credibility of your results transmission system. It will be foolhardy to go into the same system without inquiring what went wrong with this system and how are you fixing it, and how many days do you need to, because it is not just conducting this election, it is also behooves the IEBC to ensure that they instill public confidence in the processes they are undertaking now, because they have been given a second chance.
And I think sometimes it's very good to be honest. There are some people who go, for them elections are a business. Every time there's an election, they fundraise through nomination fees. They collect money through pay bills. Even today I've seen a NASA pay bill. They don't want elections. Kenyans are sick and tired of these games that they are playing, putting roadblocks. Oh, we need this process, we need that. People queued, and they queued from 5 a.m. to 9. The list that the judiciary should have asked for. Take us to Kasarani. Let us count those one by one. We count the votes. These technical aspects of transmission, that is where the problem was. It was okay for the MCA, for the governors, for the MPs, the senators, the women reps. But when it comes to the presidency, because it is a business, people have perfected this art of organizing elections every now and then to raise money from people.
But David, is it not prudent even for Jubilee to say, look, we want to know how you're going to do your procurement and by which date, etc.? Are you not concerned at all about that?
The procurement procedures were perfected. They went to court. They got their way. Why is it that this country must always be bending over twice? It's like it's either my way or the highway. Every time we are faced with something, like now, I am glad the CEO of NASA is here. They've started putting conditions. Oh, if it's without IEBC, we are not going. And we are asking. The judgment is fine. They are very happy with it. Part of that judgment was a directive from the Supreme Court. You go and repeat this thing within 60 days, and the areas that we found, like what is calling interrogating, the transmission and whatever, perfect it. The commissioner here just said, everything is in place. Our systems are in place. IEBC systems are in place. They even had a roadmap, he said, in the event of a runoff or whatever. So, what is it that they're talking about?
Can I comment?
Yes, Thomas, and talk about Norman's concerns first in the arriving to this stage in terms of knowing the various benchmarks that IEBC should have set to redo this process. Is that something, is it reasonable to say that this should be something in the public domain?
Yeah, I think, and if you allow me, the starting point is the judgment of the Supreme Court. and this is the judgment I have. If you look at this judgment, they say determination of petition without reasons. So what the judges said is they summarize, they arrive at their decision. And although, you see, because we must caution politicians against bashing institutions, we are a country governed by the rule of law. We may not agree with this judgment. I do not agree with it myself. But because we are governed by the rule of law, the court has spoken. Let us then go to this election as ordered by the court. It is in our constitution. Let us prepare for it. However, I find it faulty. Faulty in the sense that in 2013, the same court reached a very short decision like this. But then that decision was not as upsetting. Therefore, there was no need for reasons. In this one, there was need for the court to guide IEBC. You can't just say there were irregularities, there were illegalities, and therefore we nullify the election. Now, you're not telling IEBC what to do. Remember, they're giving their election, their reasoning in 21 days. Within 21 days, they will be left with only 40 days to conduct the election. It's not practically possible. So IEBC right now is groping in the dark. It is saying, is it about technology? What are these irregularities? And remember,
but the court has already said that this election should be done in strict conformity to the law. Is that not in itself a clear?
Allow me to finish.
Then they need to tell the commission what is it in the constitution which they found not to be in conformity with the law and the constitution. And he's very right. The dissenting judges read their piece and their reasons for dissenting. None of the other majority judges read anything to give us a reason about why they nullified.
And I was coming to that. And I was saying, because of that, remember there were 6 elections. The other 5, again, just like 2013, are okay, except this one. The judges have separated the election of the presidential and instead of looking at the totality of what we went through. In other words, let me put it in simple terms. It's like saying, let me hang you because you are guilty, I will tell you why we hang you later on.
Precisely.
So the person is dying without knowing why is being hung. Anyway, that's a very...
But Commissioner, what is good for the goose must be good for the gander. You enjoyed this judgment in 2013. And I think, Commissioner, if we go to a question of morality, really you should be the last person to speak authoritatively in criticism of the Supreme Court. You enjoyed a cushion of the Supreme Court in 2013. This time the Supreme Court has said, no, we are not satisfied that this election has been conducted in strict conformity with the Constitution. And the reasoning that said that election is a process, that if the process is flawed, then the result is flawed. But what you are trying to say that it was good in 2013 for the petitioner to be hanged, but it is wrong in 2017 for the respondent to be hanged. Let us accept one thing, that there is only one institution that holds the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission to account, and that is the Supreme Court by way of a petition. If the Supreme Court does not hold IEBC to account, if it only makes ordinary recommendations in its judgment, IEBC will have no motivation, it will have no inspiration to perform and conduct itself in strict compliance with the law. And I must add that I think Jubilee lawyers are doing a poor job, completely poor job, because if you look at the way David is arguing, they've not sufficiently advised their people.
Having said that, which I'm sure you'd argue, gentlemen, I must push us to move past that point because we're not debating per se that decision. Now we're talking about what it will take for IEBC to run this election. And so, Norman, in that respect, because NASA has been very clear that they have issues with individuals within the commission, do you believe there should be, number one, a complete overhaul of commissioners, and if not, why so? And why in particular does it appear that NASA has trained its guns on the Secretariat and its leadership of Chiloba?
I think we've been very clear that we are not interested in having commissioners removed from office. There has even been an admission from none less than the chairman of the commission that the Secretariat staff he's dealing with are not up to the task. And it is not lost on us that the Secretariat participated actively in bungling the August 8th election. The logs that were provided to us by the ICT Director Muhati after 6 hours of haggling despite a court order are the very logs that we analyzed to show that there was massive tampering with the results transmission system, that there was compromise of the transmission. Actually, what we have now from those logs is that no single form from 34A was transmitted by KIMS from the polling station, and this was amplified and buttressed by the failure of IEBC to give the logs of the trail of transaction from each KIMS kit, despite a court order.
And so when IEBC, we have learned, has proposals such as this, that commissioners want the CEO, Ezra Chiloba, sent on compulsory leave, his place taken over by Deputy Marjan Hussein, and when they say Kasait, Torre, and Muhati should also leave office and their roles to be taken over by Patrick Odame, Salome Oyugi, and Mike Ouma, is that something that NASA would be agreeable to?
It sinks deeper than that. Those directorates, I can tell you, that removing the head of that directorate and leaving his cronies there, you don't solve the problem. So what the commission is engaged in is a public relations exercise.
No. Commission.
David respond. What do you think about IBC's
You have just had the names. Oyugi, Siyui Nani. These people, they have put people from their own strongholds, apparently because they were the deputies, to come and super. And we don't get, then by the way, we can even let them even name the referee, whatever they want, we are ready for them. And going back to what Commissioner said, this is ICC 2, where you already indict some people and then you go fishing for the evidence. This is a case where if they had the temerity to say, like in Jokindongo or Ojoang, these are our conclusions, these are our findings, these are our reasons for dismissing. But you cannot give us determination of a petition without a reason. We need to understand 21 days on, like Commissioner says, 21 days the Commission is still in the dark. And they expect the Commission to correct the faults or the mistakes. We expect within, in fact we demand, those judges must give that Commission within the next week or so the reasons and the areas where they expect them to improve to comply with the Constitution and the law.
But David,
we are concerned, the real reasons why these people were bringing in the technology and all those roadblocks, also that they can use that. If you checked that, those of us who are following the case, all the areas where those problems were Likoni, Movita, all NASA strongholds is where you had forms missing signatures, returning officers not signing, which is a crime, by the way. And we are saying this thing should go manual. Let people vote, let their votes be counted.
Jubilee wants this election to be manually counted?
The polling station is a primary unit. This is where people queue up to vote. Let people queue there, vote there, it's counted. If they want to come and count these votes,
but the law also provides that it should be that the election should be based on technology and have a supplementary
so that they can have an excuse.
Can I comment on
votes commissioner are cast? But you can count one by one. They are even today. If we take those boxes,
technology should be abandoned altogether.
Today, Magaya, I challenge you.
I think, Murada, you must exercise. You must exercise some level of honesty.
And we agree that you bring those boxes.
Even in your abundance,
we count them one by one by one.
Allow me that's fine, but I want to clarify what David is saying. I want to clarify what David is saying. David, are you saying that in the election in 42 days' time, that technology should not be used for transmission of results, and the position of the Jubilee Party is that votes should be counted manually?
No. We are saying they are taking advantage for technological failures and challenges to use as an excuse to nullify. The IEBC had already declared, the commissioner, 11,000 areas were poor network areas. That was point number one. So, and by the way, and from what we followed in the court, there was no problem with 34As. The problem was with 34Bs. 34Bs are the tallies from the polling stations to the constituency, where they insisted again, the constituency, whatever is announced there is final. Then they got some of their returning officers not to even sign this thing.
So you expect technology to be used in 42 days time?
We don't care. If the IBC can perfect it, fine. But, and they said the principal polling station where the Wananchi go and vote, it is part of the IEBC. And whatever is coming out of there, it is representative of the IBC. When you go to the Supreme Court, which is a court of original jurisdiction, and it is the final court, you cannot appeal. It really pours water on the will of the people. In fact, this thing is not about Jubilee. It's not that Jubilee lost this case. It is the Kenyans who queued there, they cast their vote, and they wanted their vote. Their vote was counted.
David, we hear you.
And then somebody is saying,
but we're moving past. We are now past the decision. We are past the decision to the point where an election is being carried out in 42 days.
Let me give some perspective. And what this country needs to understand, including our judges, both at the Supreme Court, High Court, Court of Appeal, is that there are no perfect elections in the world. There are no perfect elections. Even in America, there were issues. So, but we can always make our elections better. To me, as an election expert and a commissioner who has participated in elections, this election was much better than the 2013 election. I think the problem is, and I want to advise my colleagues who are in the IEBC now, they need to communicate better. What do I mean? I mean this way. In 2013, we communicated and said the machines collapsed, so we are going manual. This time, their readings were showing in the screens, and they come and say those are statistics. And then they are not telling the country, now we are moving to bring all the 34 forms, and these are the correct forms. It would have made a much difference even to the Supreme Court judges. So what am I saying? Going forward, now that we are going for a repeat election, the Commission must come out clearly, communicate to Kenyans, both the technology they are using and the backup of the manual backup system. Because manual system is still a system which is verifiable and accurate. Let us not rubbish it. In fact, much developed countries like the UK, they don't have anything electronic in their systems.
Let me ask this, because NASA has been very clear about who it wants to go and the reasons why, David, and Jubilee has opposed the same. Now we have heard from IEBC that they're having their own internal process where they believe certain individuals should step down. In what way, if Jubilee is all set and it doesn't matter, you believe IEBC is fine, but in what way can such a process be done where you believe it will not be a witch hunt? In which way can we relook the officers? Because the court, whether we agree with the decision or not, has said that certain things did not happen right. In which way can these people be removed, replaced, etc.?
There has to be a reason. There must be something. They must tell Kenyans, we are removing so and so because they were responsible for this and this and that. You see, and this whole thing is about derailing this election. And I've told you, these people don't want this election. They want to force a situation because after 60 days, they are thinking there will be a caretaker government. That will not happen.
David, that's a tired argument that you can't get away.
No way.
It's a tired argument.
This election will not happen.
Invent something better.
The
constitution dictates, not a court order. The constitution dictates that where an election is nullified, they must have a repeat within 60 days. You don't need to educate anyone about that.
Practical.
Listen,
that it will not be possible to happen.
You will benefit more if you listen, because you are talking to yourself, selling propaganda to yourself.
The new IEBC.
Selling propaganda to yourself, and you are not benefiting.
Gentlemen, I'll ask you some decorum.
Let me make you better in a while.
Let's listen to each other.
I think
I want to listen to
having both of you said that, and clearly with the nature of the disagreement that there is, who should drive this process of agreeing on, Thomas, on agreeing on how we arrive at either new people for these positions or how any possible replacements of the commission should be done?
The court spoke, and the court clearly said these elections will be conducted by the IEBC. The court, even in this determination without reasons, did not attribute the errors that occurred to any particular individual. They never mentioned any names. Now, I think that we are preparing election in the next 45 days. It will be very unfair, even for the commission, to attack its own officers. The commission and the chairman particularly must protect those staff. They must allow the current CEO and the staff to work and deliver in the next election. Although there are certain errors which occurred, they are not attributable directly to any of these staff. And if we want to bungle the next election in 45 days, then let us remove these experienced officers who are well trained in elections, well knowledgeable in elections, and we bring in new people who don't know anything.
They've asked for the Director of Public Prosecutions to investigate. Should they await formal criminal charges to be pressed against any of these officers?
I think that is their own undoing. I mean, why would they invite? The court did not say that. I think they should have awaited the full text of the
But the court has already said that this election was not done in strict conformity of the law. Was it not prudent on IEBC's part to say if we did anything wrong,
all they needed to do,
let us have an investigation?
It's a common practice in elections. After an election event, there is something called post-election evaluation. And the commission now can internally audit its system, know where it went wrong, rectify those. At least they know that the court is folding inter alia on technology. So they can look at that. But remember, as I said before, technology is just one aspect of it. They need also to look at their systems. And I said, this election is only one. Now we're only going for one election. IEBC has delivered on 5 elections. Please let's allow them to deliver this one. Politicians must allow, and again, why are we always allowing these politicians, and the two of them are here, why are they allowing them to interfere with this commission?
But this is my question, who are the stakeholders in this process? Already both sides are quite aggrieved. So who are the stakeholders who can bring everybody to the table and agree on a kind of, on the commission that should run this election?
I mean, the court has said IEBC will conduct this election. So I actually wonder why some other parties are saying UN, they don't do elections. The court has said IEBC will conduct the election. I think politicians need to give IEBC a break. And both sides of the divide, both the Jubilee and the NASA. Let us allow the commission to deliver. And talking to IEBC, the chairman must protect the commission. The chairman must protect those staff. And the chairman,
and I think I have a right of rebuttal. I have a right of rebuttal. Let me exercise my right of rebuttal. One, commission is just splitting hairs and making arguments that are not really in consonance with the situation on ground. One, he's saying that there are no mistakes attributable to individuals. The ICT report, the logs provided, analysis of them, show that there was show that I was involved in this court process all through, so I have the benefit of more information.
Go ahead, Norman.
Clearly show that, for instance, the chairman's password being used from an authorized IP address accessed the results transmission system and made changes over 9,989 times. That one returning officer in Bomet, using an authorized IP address, deleted Form 34As and Form 34Bs from the system. That officials of the president accessed the system and made changes. And you can sit here and tell us that these mistakes cannot be attributed to an ICT manager. That they cannot be attributed to an ICT manager. Secondly, brother, you will have your bite. Let me finish. Secondly, we are talking about having an election that is in conformity with the law in the next 45 days. Elections are too big, and this was said by his former chairman. It used to be his rallying call, that elections are too big to be left to IEBC only. That there must be a consultative process with the stakeholders. And if you look at our statement on the day the court issued this statement, we said that let a bipartisan approach be undertaken. That where there are things that need to be fixed, let them be fixed in a bipartisan approach.
Strictly, what are you proposing, Norman? What are you proposing? Do you want an IPPG style of consultation? What exactly do you want?
No, it doesn't have to take an IPPG. We said that there can be a team of technical persons, because then you divorce the politics from it. You look at the critical areas that need proposition, and you are not directing the commission. They will make proposals to the commission. The commission will decide which proposal it takes on board.
How do you pick
then you carry an election. Then you carry.
How do you pick the technical experts? Are they nominated by the different
stakeholders? Will be asked to, and this does not just involve the political players. It will bring on board even professional societies. It will bring on board faith-based groups. That then we have a moderated approach. 2-3 days. We said these problem areas, this proposition can be carried on board.
And it's not a IEBC?
Yes. And no, IEBC participates in the process, like they held a national election conference. And they move forward and conduct an election.
No. I think the problem with our electoral process is where you have the players wanting also to be the ones to drive it. Now, this is a very clear judgment from the Supreme Court, and you messed up with this exercise. You have been given an assignment, and we think you did 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you go and do that exercise again properly? where do the political parties come into this one? They want another Windsor session. In Windsor, even all the things that were agreed on, they even subsequently went to court challenging the same things those IPPG inter-party discussions had agreed on. He has just given us some insights because he was in there about 9,000 logs, about Bomet. So why was it so difficult for those 4 esteemed judges to even just highlight some of the things he's now highlighting instead of giving us a blanket ruling without reasons? That was so obvious if that was true, because we know exactly what is supposed to have happened at the Supreme Court, and we even know the people who, I don't know whether from your servers in the clouds or whatever, but I'm telling you, and the minute they came out of court, they were categorical. Number one, we are not going to go into this repeat election with the IEBC as currently constituted, because you cannot say somebody who has already messed you up is going to referee you again. And they know if they create that kind of crisis, there is no way another election can be held. And so in 60 days.
Jubilee will not be party to any talks
we are going to follow. We are going to follow the ruling. Incidentally, and this was a court order from the Supreme Court. They ordered the IEBC, can you go and conduct this election within 60 days? The same IEBC is then constituted. They did not talk about jiggling or juggling or fixing it. Actually, they told the same IEBC, go and do this thing within 60 days.
NASA in Mathare yesterday also said that they want new returning officers. Is that something you will equally oppose?
We don't care. I mean, I told you we don't care who's the referee or the returning officer. But again, if you check, it is returning officers in the NASA strongholds who had 40 returns,
you know, that
who were not signing.
The correct proposition.
And if he can tell you the truth, there was no problem with
I can point out 10 areas that are not NASA areas. I will start with Mandera. I will start with Mandera. Mandera North, Mandera South, okay, Tarakaniti, okay, Chuka, and then Igarangombe. These are not NASA areas, okay. Igembe South. This is not NASA. Immense Central, more than 100% voter turnout. This is not a NASA stronghold. So it is simplistic for you to say. And if you look at even the returning officers in the areas you are saying NASA strongholds, the returning officers posted there are not people who come from those areas. The returning officers at the coast, for example, the one in Likoni, is a person hailing from Kericho. So how can you say that these are NASA?
You even organized and made the IEBC.
And to Murabe, the only person who tempered and interfered with the Windsor process is you. Using your tyrant of numbers, you introduced Elections Act Amendment laws, number 1 of 2017.
Thomas, what do you think about this proposal to have also the returning officers in the constituencies scrapped?
Well, I think we are missing the point. The judges followed the Constitution of Kenya, particularly Article 143. And that's what they did, because already the Constitution of Kenya had anticipated some of these things. The point to note is that it is the current IEBC who will conduct these elections. Now, that is the point. Whether they are going to make changes themselves internally, after auditing the processes, they will look at it. If they want to change the returning officers, that is their duty. I don't think it is the duty of these politicians to try to dictate to IEBC what they need to do. But talking about that, Anne, there is a lot of emphasis on technology. And that is where we go wrong. Because technology fails, and doesn't just fail in this country, it fails everywhere. I think we need to be authentic that our election is not really wholly technological. In other words, we pick a ballot paper, we tick on it, we put it in the box, we count everything manually. The only electronic we have is on the identification and on transmission. If transmission fails, we need to have the actual forms. And that is a credible election. You cannot tell us that because technology has failed, the election has failed. In fact, if I may talk about this current election, I think it is too wrong for the judges to have relied so much on the servers who logged into what. The most important thing was that we had all the forms. That is what ought to have been looked at. If there are any errors, and by the way, errors are bound to occur in 40,000 polling stations. Were those errors so material as to affect the nullification of the result? In my opinion, no.
And yet we
the
cannot.
errors affected 5.1 million votes.
Hold your thought.
If those could not affect the result, I don't know.
Regardless of whether we here at the panel think that was a good reason, it doesn't matter anymore because we are facing an election. So, since you've introduced the question of technology, let me start there. Do you believe the KIMS kit needs an audit? Do we need new kits? Should we be looking at where they're supplied from? I think NAS has been quite categorical, at least yesterday, that the French firm cannot be used. Let's start with Jubilee's position.
The KIMS worked. I went there and I put my finger and it identified me and I was given the ballot and I voted. And every Wanjiko happened. There never is an issue with that one. We voted, the votes were counted and they were then transmitted and the KIMS worked. In fact, they were watching the portal. Up to a point where when they realized they were losing, they started now saying somebody is manipulating. But I want to support what Commissioner here said. Let politicians keep out of this exercise. Let the parties keep off. The IEBC is an independent electoral and boundaries commission. Let them do their job. Let not political interests, because even our issue with the courts is the larger public interest. Whenever you activist judiciary, they have given some rulings which are not cognizant of the wider public interest, the stability of this country. The economic is plummeting. The very first day it went down the stock exchange. Today I saw on your news, 32 billion lost. These are people who don't care about what happens even to Wanjiko in terms of her economic life. And she has nothing to blame. She goes faithfully to cast her vote for who she wants to vote for. She goes home.
KIMS does not need
And then these systems now start affecting her materially. And I think this is something we must agree. Let the politicians keep out of this election. Let the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission conduct it as per the directive of the court. Let us sit back and wait for the results.
Does the KIMS kit, Thomas, need an audit, and should there be more transparency regarding IEBC's servers? There are proposals to have a kind of read-only access for parties so that they can be sure that, the system is not being corrupted. Is that necessary?
Well, from what we saw, and I also went to vote in Ngambo Primary in Baringo County, is that those KIMS, at least this time, they worked. And they worked perfectly. I mean, they were, even if you look at the observations reports, the machines worked, and they worked really perfectly. I think what may have failed was probably in transmission in certain areas. That is the aspect we need to look at. But as I have said also, there must be that backup, and we must allow that backup. Because as I said, Anne, there are no perfect elections anywhere in the world. So we must allow the institutions to work. I want to urge our courts to give the IEBC some benefit of doubt. Allow it to work. Let's build this institution. Much as the court is saying respect our ruling, we also want to ask them, also respect the work the IEBC is doing. Sometimes if you are sitting in a court of law, you don't know the logistics involved in running an election, and you make a determination. I think we need to educate our
But let's go back. Well, but also it can be argued that that's why lawyers were there. They should have made their submissions, of a certain standard, and perhaps they did. But anyway, having said that, you've talked about the transmission part, that it failed in certain areas. So how can that be improved? Because we had all mobile service providers involved in this process. They, at least at the point that we were going to the last election, IEBC had said you only move to the nearest. Next IEBC center to be able to send your results.
Well, so now that they have a second chance to look at this system, they can audit it, they can look at where they went wrong, and I'm sure because it's only one election, it's possible that the machines this time will work better. But again, there must be the manual backup. It's provided in law, it is there, it's accurate, it's verifiable.
No, for the benefit of
let Norman respond to the technology part.
I must put this very clearly, that no result in a single KIEMS kit was transmitted from the polling station to the National Rally Center. I can speak on that ex cathedra with authority. It didn't happen. IEBC needs to get back possession and control of its system. When court ordered them to provide access to the servers, for the whole day, the entire ICT machinery at IEBC could not open those servers until an expert from Safran came at 5:30 in the evening to help them access their own system. It's a problem. So what happens on the election day if your own experts cannot access this system? Two, if you look at the manner in which these results were coming in, Commissioner here says he's an election expert, he's been a serving commissioner. The way results are thrown in randomly from different polling stations, the nature in which they present themselves on the screen will be different. But these results were coming in batches. If you look at the logs, and we were able to analyze from the time the first results came in to the last result, these results were coming in batches. They are held somewhere and thrown in on the screen in batches. These results were not being transmitted from the polling station, and that's why the Commission could not provide the transaction logs from each KIEMS with the GPRS showing the actual location.
And so what does NASA want in as far as technology?
What we've said...
A complete new kits to be brought into the country?
We don't need new kits.
Okay.
We have kits that can work.
All right.
And just like in 2013, it was said the technology did not fail. People made the technology to fail. These schemes can work. They were made not to transmit results deliberately. Can we have IT people? Okay? And if the Commission needs to get to the back of this, they just need to find out why did one of their staff had to be killed? Who was dealing with this?
So when you say can we get IT people, what do you mean by that? Hired, a fresh hiring by IEBC?
Simply put, the current technical staff handling the KIEMS kit, the servers and everything at IEBC have no capacity to deliver a poll that is...
You want all of them gone, the entire IT department?
Yeah.
The entire IT department.
Yes, and I have to say something.
As we wind up.
KIEMS is for Wanjiko. It is identification and transmission. My friend here doesn't tell you how many people went with their fingerprint for identification and it failed. And if you don't have network coverage in this hall and you go to the gate, because those are technological challenges which have nothing to do with you, they have everything to do with the service providers. Because of where we are with the technology for the service providers, you would go out there and you want to make that phone call because there's a network. Now, what has happened, they were asking for the GPS position to be able to demonstrate that this location of the polling station is not where you transmitted from, because you went to the gate, because that's where your phone or the equipment would be alive to the network, and that is normal.
I think rather the clarification the Commission offered was that you are supposed to capture the form scan and then key in the results, and that when you are transmitting, if the results don't tell with the scanned form, it will not transmit. And if there was no network, the instructions to presiding officers was moved to the constituency tally center. When you get there, it will transmit. So even if it didn't show a GPRS location transmitting at a polling station, it will show transmitting somewhere within that very constituency or at the tallying center, and nobody had a problem with that. So I'm rather simplifying a very serious issue.
We have to wind up, gentlemen. We have to end up. Let's allow Thomas to make his final.
I think, and it's true that there could have been challenges in the transmission, and the Commission now has time again to look into their system and rectify. Remember, they overpromised. They demonstrated and said it will come with a form. I think overpromising sometimes is a problem. But talking about this, they need to be clear in their communication. What was lacking in the Commission was proper communication, that now we have a challenge here and we are resorting, because what has happened essentially is that we resorted into a manual system. We abandoned that KIEMS. And therefore, there was no need again to insist on looking at the logs when we actually have the forms. That is my take. But now that they have another chance, let them rectify where there were certain problems.
Commissioner, and so here we are at the end of the broadcast with pretty much no agreement on how anything should happen. But be that as it may, in 42 days' time, you'll be going back to the ballot to choose your presidential candidate, and we'll certainly be following the developments between all stakeholders in the run-up to this election. Michael Kenyi is up next. He's got the sport.